Okay, we're live. Sorry for the slightly delay, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Here we are with another episode of our weekly recap at the Defiant. I'm Camila Russo, the founder. We have Alex here, staff reporter, YYC trader, head of news, and yeah, thanks everyone. So this week started with the fallout of the banking crisis in the US, where three major banks failed in less than a week. And this caused major pain for crypto startups and also for stablecoins. There was also the long awaited Arbitrum drop and a $200 million hack of Euler Finance, one of the biggest in DeFi history. And then a bunch of technical news, the biggest one being the Ethereum Chapella upgrade. Chapella, right? And this is a huge step towards allowing stakers and of the Ethereum network to withdraw their ETH. So let's get to it, and let's start with the fallout of the banking crisis, which Alex covered very well this week.
Yeah, I mean, where do I even start, right? Like, so much has happened on the banking front. And the main takeaway right now is just that crypto firms in the United States, they're having trouble accessing banking services. Their top bank folded last week, Silvergate. Their second favorite bank, Signature, was seized by the New York Department of Financial Services on Sunday for reasons that seem kind of sketchy to a couple people. And Silicon Valley Bank last Friday also folded. It was known to bank crypto companies, one of them being Circle, and we can talk about the fallout there over the last weekend. But one can argue that these are collectively the three top banking partners for the industry. And given the fact that regulators right now are making life hard for crypto companies, to say the least, it seems as though there are going to be few companies that are willing to jump in to fill the void that's been left by all of this, right? So spoke to a professor of banking over at the University of Alabama. And one of the things that she mentioned to me is not just that firms might hesitate to bank crypto partners because they fear regulatory pressure, but also there are a lot of crypto companies now that have a lot of money and they're looking for a place to put that money. Banks, they can't just take all of that in all at once. I mean, they need to scale up. They need to, there's a lot of stuff that happens on the back end that folks might not see, and that's not something that they can do overnight. So even if some random regional bank in the country wanted to do this, it can't really, not today. It would take some time. And we're seeing firms look overseas for bank partners right now. So one of the things that I highlighted in that story, highlighted also by a note to JP Morgan investors in one of their research papers that they distributed, is the fact that some companies in the UK now are getting ready to offer US dollar denominated services to any crypto company that feels like it can't do business over here anymore. On a related front, the bank issues have been referred to as a coordinated assault on crypto from the Biden administration, an attempt to systematically choke off its access to the traditional finance world. The Blockchain Association, probably the biggest lobbying group on crypto's behalf in Washington, D.C., they've been banging that drum for a couple of weeks now, but acknowledged earlier this week that so far that theory that this is a coordinated effort is really just speculation. It seems that way. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, but we don't know for sure. And so they've solicited stories from crypto firms that have been having trouble getting access to new bank accounts, or crypto firms that have had bank accounts that were then closed without warning or explanation. they've also sent open records request to the banking regulators, the FDIC, the Fed, and the OCC, looking for evidence that this is actually something that they've been doing on the back end, right? Like going to banks and saying, hey, we don't want you to touch crypto companies anymore, because that's illegal, right? This is, it's a legal industry. Cam, you're muted.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if it's true, if these allegations and speculation is true, they would be discriminating an entire industry with no real, basis for doing that.
That would be a scandal, because they've even said, these very banking regulators have said, crypto is risky. We really warn you, banks, be careful if you ever want to dabble in this industry or work with these companies. But we're not saying that you can't, that would be illegal. This isn't meant to be taken as you can't do business with them. And so if it were true that like on one hand, they're telling people, oh, you can still do business with them, but on the other, they're saying, but really you shouldn't, then that'd be huge.
Yeah. And just taking a step back, the reason why there's this speculation now and this FOIA request was sent now was because over the past week, there were 3 bank failures. The first one was Silvergate, which had issues with its balance sheet. Then SVB came next, Silicon Valley Bank. Similar issues, it took investments that in US Treasuries, where they didn't expect rates to rise so quickly, and then there was a kind of mismatch of assets. They went to raise capital. People were spooked about that, and that kind of sparked a run on the bank, which it was this kind of domino effect that ended up in regulators taking over. And then over the weekend, Signature was the 3rd bank to fall, and that's where I think the main source of this speculation stems from, right? It's the fact that Signature apparently had enough, was their balance sheet was strong enough to sustain operations, but they were told from regulators that they still had to shut down. And the speculation there is that they were pressured to do this because they service many crypto companies and startups. So that's kind of what this investigation wants to get to the bottom of, I think.
Yeah, and Barney Frank, he's a former congressman, a Democrat from Massachusetts, crypto skeptic as well. He was on the board of Signature Bank, and he's been giving plenty of interviews over the past week where he says, yeah, just like you said, right? Look, our balance sheet was healthy. Yes, there was a run on our deposits, and it was in fact sparked by crypto irrationally, he believes, because some of their other customers, most of their customers weren't in the crypto industry, and those that weren't were worried about the bank's affiliation with crypto and started withdrawing their money on Friday. Bank executives apparently were confident they could weather that run, but the New York Department of Financial Services, they claim that data that the bank was giving them was irregular or faulty or otherwise untrustworthy in some way, and they felt like they had to take control of the bank and depose its leadership. And Frank has been telling anybody who will listen that he thinks they did this really to make an example of the bank for having done business with crypto.
Yeah, and it's just another example of how hard it's becoming to operate as a crypto business in the US. So one kind of example of this is the company behind TrueUSD moved $1 billion of its reserves offshore after this. And this is just one example of what I think probably many other crypto companies are looking to do after all of the regulatory actions, and then the major banks servicing the industry failing, and the lack of alternatives for crypto companies. I don't know where there was this quote here. I think that said like okay. So the executive at TrueUSD said, "I doubt you would have seen anything like this turmoil if companies like ours would have been allowed to bank with Citi or JP Morgan." So I thought that was a really great quote. It's like there's this, three banks that took risky bets that service the crypto industry, and when they failed, crypto was left with very few alternatives for banking because other larger banks, more stable banks, won't even have them as clients. So this we've talked about this before, but it's just, I think, a very poor strategic decision by the US, which will drive this really high growth industry elsewhere. And then to move on to another interesting fallout for crypto is what happened to stablecoins because of these bank failures. I think, well, let's take a step back. So what was the story that we did? USDC depegged, or I should say traded below its $1 peg over the weekend because Circle, the company issuing USDC, held, how much was it?
I don't remember the exact figure, but
I think it was like 8% of their reserves backing USDC were in
it was 3.3
signature. Yeah. So that was held in signature, I believe, or wait, no, in
Silicon
SVB.
Valley Bank, and
in Silicon Valley Bank.
In the event that they couldn't get access to that money, USDC would have become effectively under collateralized.
Right.
And it's actually surprising to me, like the traders responded so aggressively that it actually fell. Like if it's 8% of its reserves, like, one would think the lowest it could trade at would be 92 cents on the dollar, but it actually plunged even below that. It was like 84 or 88% or something like that.
Yeah. There was just so much confusion over the weekend on, how much exactly was Circle holding in Silicon Valley Bank, and what would happen to those assets. I mean, last weekend was absolutely crazy. Like it started out with first Silvergate, then Silicon Valley Bank failing that Friday. All of the bank stocks crashed that day. Then the news came out that Circle had money in Silicon Valley Bank. The stablecoin started to depeg over the weekend. Unlike traditional markets, crypto does trade over the weekend. So, everyone holding USDC reserves, like most crypto startups, I think, or projects, were kind of frantically figuring out or trying to decide kind of what to do with their USDC as it depegged. And meanwhile, their bank accounts were being shut, and it was hard to know whether they'd be able to access cash to make payroll on Monday. It was a crazy weekend. In the end, everything kind of resolved. Jeremy Allaire, Circle CEO, came out saying that whatever happened, Circle would stand by USDC, and the stablecoin would be redeemable at 1-to-1 on Monday. So that caused the USDC to trade closer to the peg. And then basically what happened is that regulators stepped in and made sure that all depositors of Silicon Valley Bank would be made 100% whole. Same with other banks. So in the end, it was like it seemed like there would be a huge kind of financial crisis that would be kind of unfolding over the weekend, and then everything was resolved by Monday. So it was a really kind of roller coaster time. I don't know. We hadn't seen that in a while.
Good time to trade USDC.
Yeah.
No kidding.
You could have made a nice profit there.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of panic. One unfortunate trader, I'm sure the example's gone around a lot. He, in his desperation to get out of USDC, he ended up trading over $2 million of Curve LP tokens for 5 cents of Tether. Because what happened was, instead of withdrawing liquidity from Curve directly, which he would probably taken a loss 6, 7, 8% tops. He tried to swap his LP tokens on a DEX, and somewhere out there was a Uniswap V2, an old pool, which had like $2 of liquidity in it. I mean, obviously it was just dust; it had been left behind. But somehow his trade managed to get routed through that pool, and as soon as that happened, a very enterprising bot went and drained the LP tokens back out of that pool, right? Because there's always people watching for these imbalanced pools and whatnot. But yeah, there was a lot of panic for sure. And it kind of shook confidence, I think, in USDC to some extent, even though it was resolved over a couple of days. I feel like, and we're seeing that in the market too, right? Where Tether, of all things, after all the FUD and doubt that's been thrown at it over the years, who would have thought it would have been the stablecoin that emerged rock solid through all the turmoil of the last year? So its circulating supply has gone up, I think, by 10% over the last week. So it's absorbed all the people who were abandoning USDC, DAI, Frax, and everything else.
It was really crazy. It's so ironic to see Tether become kind of the preferred, at least like fiat-backed stablecoin coming out of this. Like for so long, there was this, kind of fear looming over crypto that Tether was the black swan, and because of the lack of transparency and just the concern about the reserves backing USDT, that it would be the one to depeg and kind of take crypto down with it. But it's gone through so many investigations and crackdowns and crises, and it remains standing. So it's pretty crazy to see that USDC was the one to kind of have issues. But we also saw, USDT came out stronger, but also Liquidity, LUSD, which is one of the only or few stable coins that are backed 100% by crypto, by ETH in this case. So you either had two options as a stablecoin holder. You could go to another fiat-backed stablecoin, which you thought was less risky than USDC. So that's maybe Tether, maybe Paxos stablecoin, or you could go to a more decentralized stablecoin that doesn't rely on having assets in a bank. And Liquidity is, I think, right now the strongest option, or at least the larger one, like the largest crypto-backed stablecoin. So LUSD market cap also jumped because of all this. So you had kind of those two alternatives to USDC. And I think like it was saying it was remarkable that DAI kind of didn't benefit from all this. And I think it kind of shows a missed opportunity for DAI, because like so much of DAI is backed by USDC itself. In the end, I think many holders are wondering kind of what's the value prop of holding DAI right now. If it's backed by USDC, why not hold USDC? Instead of taking this kind of mixed risk of ETH plus
Right.
USDC, I would, just hold USDC. If you want like a fully decentralized stablecoin, I'll go for Liquidity, who is like actually only backed by ETH. So I think right now DAI is put in this odd position where it's not like fully one thing or the other. It's like it's not committing to be like fully fiat regulated stablecoin, and it's not committing to be fully decentralized crypto backed. So yeah, I don't think it's in a good place.
Yeah, and I'll just note one of the folks leaving comments here, Hikikomori, noted RAI as an option. If we're talking about decentralized stable coins, RAI is quite different from LUSD, but it's another option. I actually just checked, and their market cap has also shot up over the past 2 weeks.
Oh, interesting.
So it looks like some people are going there as well. Also brought up the fact that, I'm sorry, go ahead, YYC.
We had True USD as well. That's kind of picked up in the last month. I think rumor has it that Binance, with their BUSD issues, are pushing this one, TUSD, as a potential alternative, because two things that were noticed. One, Binance minted about 150 million worth of TUSD, I think was last week or so. And yesterday they announced 0 trading fees for Bitcoin and ETH pairs with TUSD. So that would encourage users to trade that pair, right? So yeah, could be related.
Yeah, so I mean, lots of options, and we have this video here detailing all the different categories of stablecoins. It's a great one, so recommend it. And yeah, just I'm seeing here in the comments, just to clarify that LUSD is over collateralized by ETH. So the idea is that even if ETH is volatile and moves above or beyond or below a certain price, that the over collateralization allows it to maintain enough assets to back the stablecoin and have it stick to the $1 peg. And then RAI is really interesting. I just find it tough to use something that doesn't have like a peg to anything. Like it's pegged to itself. Like it's like volatility and stability relies on how it moves relative to itself, like not to anything else. So it's a bit different, but really super kind of interesting decentralized stablecoin alternative as well. So moving on from stablecoins, because there were a few other really big news this week. Well, actually, before going to Arbitrum, because this is more linked to what happened over the weekend. YYC, do you want to talk about market reaction?
Yeah, sure. So obviously we had the drama over the weekend with USDC depegging, and we saw Bitcoin and ETH kind of correct a bit as well. It wasn't like any of the major crashes we've seen. It was maybe 6-7% as the markets kind of waited to see what happened. And then we got the news that the regulators, the Fed, the FDIC, and I believe one more, came out with a joint statement saying that, yes, we're going to backstop these failed banks. Everyone will get their money on Monday. And that kicked off a rally in the markets. So we had all the DeFi protocols that got hit initially. reverse and lead the sector higher. So we had Maker, which crashed, I think 25%. The previous day was up more than 33%. And then Synthetics, Lido, basically the biggest losers took back those losses, right? And then later on in the week, we had expectations for the next rate hike kind of being tempered by the market, given the whole banking crisis that's been, I don't want to say crisis because I don't think it's quite there yet, but yeah, just the fears around the banking sector in the US. So initially, everyone was quite certain that we'd get a 50 basis point hike at the coming meeting, right? But given the recent events, that's completely been turned on its head. And now it's pretty much a little better than a coin flip between no change and 25 basis points. So on the back of that, we saw crypto kind of take the next leg up. So we had Bitcoin hit 27K almost earlier today, and ETH as well back above 1700 after a long time. So yeah, that was the reaction from the market. So it seems like it was basically a bear trap over the weekend with the whole USDC depegging and all that. And then, yeah, market started rallying as soon as we opened on Monday. Yeah, 30% in a week for Bitcoin. That's quite, that's not something we've seen in a long time.
Yeah. You're muted again.
Oh, sorry. Related to Bitcoin, interesting to see that it outperformed everything else. And I don't know if that's because the whole kind of bank failures highlighted Bitcoin's original value prop of being this kind of black swan protection asset, this digital gold, when everything really is failing and you have nowhere to put your assets, and even stable coins are suspect. I think Bitcoin is coming out as stronger because, you know, it is seen as the safest place within crypto. Like, it's obviously the original cryptocurrency, largest market cap, most liquid. So maybe, you know, after all the craziness, people are opting to buy Bitcoin. I believe also Bitcoin dominance is at some sort of high as well.
Yeah, highest since June of last year. So 9-month high.
Oh wait, where is this chart? Dominance.
Yep.
This looks different. Let's see. Yeah. So so Bitcoin is another winner out of this mini crisis. It's really interesting to see. Okay. And then now we can go to Arbitrum, the other kind of big DeFi story of the week. So Arbitrum announced its long-awaited airdrop. Alex, you covered the story.
Yeah, so Ethereum is slow. Ethereum is expensive. For Ethereum to actually be the technology that can support this new financial world, it has to become faster. It has to become a lot cheaper. And the path forward is through rollups. I mean, that is the plan. The biggest rollup today is Arbitrum. It has the most users. It has the most deposits, most activity. Last I checked, it has about 55% of the layer 2 market share, according to L2 Beat. So people have been waiting for an Arbitrum token for a long time, and the team has been really quiet about when it would drop and sometimes whether there would even be one, right? It's big news. It's every time there's an airdrop, it's like an injection of stimulus into the crypto economy, right? It's basically a lot of people getting free money, kind of. And I mean, I'm not going to speculate as to how much this token is going to be trading for a day or a week after launch, but Arbitrum has a stellar reputation within the crypto community. I mean, the technology is solid. It's got a lot of users, and so this is, I mean, and I guess to back up a little bit, to be clear, it's not just about money. It's not just about sending people tokens that they're going to be able to dump on the next person who comes along. It's the real story here is that Arbitrum is decentralizing in launching this token and distributing among people who've used the protocol, the founding team, investors, and a newly formed DAO. The founding team is handing control of the protocol and the underlying technology to the community, to the people who have the token. The token confers voting rights, governance power over Arbitrum. So it's going to go from being a platform that is controlled by the company that built it into a platform that's controlled by the people who hold its token. The distribution of the airdrop is as follows: about more than 40%, about 42% is going to go to this newly formed DAO. Another 25%, roughly 1/4, is going to go to current and future members of the Off-Chain Labs team. That's the company that built Arbitrum. About 20%, or 1/5, is going to go to investors. A little more than 11% is going to go to people who've used Arbitrum before February 6th. And the amount of tokens that you get, it will depend on how much money you put into Arbitrum, how many trades you executed, that kind of stuff. And then a little more than 1% is going to go to the other DAOs that already exist within the Arbitrum ecosystem. So technically speaking, the people who built Arbitrum will still have the most power because they'll have about 1/4 of the tokens and the voting rights. Although the news release announcing the token airdrop pointed out that they've been instructed, not sure exactly what that means, but they've been instructed to delegate their voting power so that they won't be influencing any votes on the direction of Arbitrum directly. In addition to the token drop, Arbitrum also announced this thing called Arbitrum Orbit. It's essentially a support for any team that's looking to build a layer 3 blockchain on top of Arbitrum, right? So for Ethereum to get cheaper and faster, you need layer 2 blockchains or rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism. But those two will eventually hit their capacity for the number of transactions they can process. And so Arbitrum is saying, hey, if you want to help us scale, if you want to build an L3, you can do so permissionlessly. Here's a set of tools to help you do that. So it's a big day for the protocol. It's growing up and getting thrust out into the world.
Yeah, and just for context, Arbitrum is the most, like, the largest layer 2 right now, according to L2Beat. It has 3.7 billion in TVL. As Alex mentioned, is using optimistic rollup technology. We've talked about before how there's this kind of fight between CK rollups and optimistic rollups, and there's many CK rollups coming to the market, being launched right now. Everyone's fighting over who's first, and so it remains to be seen whether optimistic rollups or CK rollup tech wins out, like which will be better scaling technology. But right now, the optimistic kind of rollup, that flavor, has a head start. Like, it was just live first before CK the CK flavor. Yeah, I think the whole purpose of crypto is to be censorship resistant and decentralized. So I think it was important for the ecosystem as a whole that their most used, like the biggest L2, was actually decentralized and not controlled by a single company, by off-chain labs in this case. So yeah, huge stay with Arbitrum decentralizing to token holders. Of course, the usual caveats. On-chain governance, DAO governance is less than perfect. In the end, it's like whales. A few whales end up making all the decisions. There's a lot of voter apathy, not a lot of participation by token holders. So how actually decentralized Arbitrum ends up being, we'll have to see. But so far DAO governance hasn't been actually very decentralized. So that's something that the space still needs to figure out. But it's still a step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, I mean, another
sorry, go ahead.
criticism has been about the centralized sequencer, right? That these optimistic rollups use, at least currently. Like those are controlled. See, the sequencer basically is the one that orders the transactions in that go into each. What are they called? Roll-up blocks before they get finalized, right? So even before they launched a token or whatever, that I think that's something that is in the roadmap but hasn't happened yet. So like you said, it's first step towards decentralization. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
And something that I think is noteworthy is when you vote in the Arbitrum DAO, the votes will be self-executing. So typically today, when a DAO votes on something, that doesn't then automatically happen on chain. Somebody else has to kind of execute the will of the DAO. So that's one thing that I know that the team was excited to highlight with this release.
Okay, yeah, got it. And I think something else to look out for will be whether activity really kind of drops off after the airdrop. As we've seen before in many projects with tokens rumored to be issued, there's this spike in activity and building and excitement in the months leading up to the actual airdrop, and then activity then kind of falls off and liquidity falls off because people have already gotten their reward. So that's something to look out for. Like, is all this TVL on Arbitrum just people waiting to farm the token, or is it kind of legitimate activity?
I mean, I think there'll be a natural movement to the next farm, right? Because we have to search for the next airdrop. I mean, there are so many on the way. Right?
That's so healthy. That's
Yeah.
just the way things should.
I mean, just
work.
off the top of my head, we have Starknet, ZK Sync, Sui, Scroll. All these people are eventually going to launch tokens. So, and they either have test nets or I think very limited mainnets running. So, yeah, still time to kind of get your ducks in a row now that Arbitrum is done.
And by the way, if you want the full list of potential airdrops, you need to subscribe to DeFi Alpha, the weekly newsletter that YYC Trader and DeFi Dad publish. It's just really literally the best source of alpha, as the newsletter name says. So subscribe if you haven't. So yeah, hope everyone listening got their ARB tokens airdrop and is going to be an active participant in governance and be working towards layer 2 decentralization. Moving to the next big story, one of the biggest hacks in DeFi happened this week with Euler. What was it? Do you want to go through what happened?
Is it Euler or Euler?
Oh, probably Euler.
I'm not saying
yeah.
that it is Euler, because I go into interviews and each time I speak to somebody about this, I say, so tell me what happened with Euler. And they're like, well, so what happened with Euler is, and I'm like, okay, I said it wrong. And then the next interview, so tell me what happened with Euler. And they're like, well, so what happened with Euler is, and I'm like,
I have no idea.
anyway.
Maybe maybe it's like, if it's Euler, is it like a German name? I declare my ignorance on this. So if I'm pronouncing it wrong, very sorry, Euler or Euler. But it was exploited. It was a huge hack for 200 million. So that's what you need to know, basically.
So this was a big one, actually. So this team, we're going to stick with Euler for this call. So then if we get corrected, we can switch it up next time. Euler is a lending protocol similar to Aave or Compound. It allows you to borrow, deposit certain assets and borrow against those assets, right? And it's been quite well regarded, and actually because of their emphasis on security, they had multiple audits done. They're backed by leading VCs, etc., and they had how many? 6 audits? 7, right?
6, I've been told.
Yeah. So this gave a lot of DeFi protocols the comfort to integrate with Euler. Which is why, as we'll go through the story, you'll see that it wasn't just Euler that was affected by the hack and the LPs and whatnot, but also a lot of different DeFi protocols, many of whom their users may not even have realized that Euler was being used behind the scenes. But anyway, coming back to the exploit. So Euler went through this big overhaul, I think about 8 months ago, and during that overhaul, there was a function that was added called donate to reserve. And this was actually quite an innocuous function whose purpose was basically, if you're closing your position on Euler, you can use this. It was probably like a toggle or a tick box. You could say, okay, like when you close complicated lending positions, you're always left with some dust, which are very small balances of the tokens that you're using. And yeah, so this function would basically say, all right, just to clear the books on your account, you can donate this dust to the protocol's reserve. And that was it. And no one actually ended up using this particular function except the Euler team, apparently. So it went under the radar, and this vulnerability was left open for 8 months before this exploit actually happened. So going through the exploit is quite complicated. We can just skip over it to say that there was a flash loan attack, which allowed the hacker to basically drain each of the asset pools one by one. And this came about because that particular function in question did not check if the account that was using it would be adequately collateralized after doing the donation transaction. So basically, you could donate a ton of tokens without having your debt balance change, which is what led to the whole exploit in the first place. So there was, I think it was DAI. The majority was in staked ETH tokens, I think 140 million or so. And then some wrapped Bitcoin and USDC as well was drained. And coming to the fallout now, obviously, the Euler team is trying to do whatever they can. They've offered a $1 million bounty now to the public for any information that leads to the hacker's arrest. They're in touch with law enforcement and pretty much doing whatever they can do to try and recover the money, right? But at this point, the hacker seems to have refused all the attempts to make a deal. So we'll have to wait and see if anything works out. But a lot of protocols lost a lot of money in this hack. So one of them was, I believe, Angle protocol, which issues a euro peg stablecoin called AGEUR. And they lost, I think, $17 million, which was half their TVL. So they've had no choice but to pause minting and redemptions of their stablecoin, which is now under collateralized by 50% or so. So I'm sure they're waiting as well to and hoping for some sort of resolution or return of at least a portion of the funds, so that they can then go ahead with a plan to recover the peg, or fix the token somehow. I think Alex spoke to another project as well, right? If you want to.
Oh, you're on mute.
I spoke to Angle Labs and to Mean Finance. Angle Labs being the euro pegged stablecoin issuer, and Mean Finance, a protocol that allows you to automate dollar cost averaging, right? The purchase of an asset to limit exposure to volatility. And they had differing takes on kind of what this says about the broader DeFi project, right? Because I was interested in this concept of composability, which is foundational to DeFi, that idea that you just take, one person builds a protocol that does this financial thing, one person builds a protocol that does another financial thing, and you can kind of just lock them together or stack them on top of each other to create like a top to bottom financial service or world or what have you. It's what makes DeFi so exciting. It's another one of those aspects though of crypto that's like a double-edged sword, because I feel like there's so many things within the industry that, like, here's the thing that it does better than the old legacy financial system, but that thing also carries some risk with it. Composability does as well. And so you see these protocols, like I think there were at least 14 affected protocols, and they had users who didn't know that there was a Euler integration, and some of them lost money because there was this back-end integration, and it's like, each time you link another protocol, you're compounding risk, because it just takes somebody to find the weakest point in that chain of technology to wreck everybody else. And the folks that I spoke to had differing opinions. One of them, he was a co-founder of Mean Finance, and he was saying that it kind of shook him, right? Because not only did some of his users lose their money, but he lost his money. He lost actually like quite a bit of his life savings in this. Now, to be clear, Mean Finance itself, I mean, that protocol worked exactly as intended. It wasn't exploited in any way itself. Only, I think, 5% of the total funds deposited there were routed through Euler. So the impact there was limited, but I mean, he lost quite a bit, and he was just, we were chatting, and he was like, composability obviously carries risk. We saw it here. I want to say that the solution is to give people choice, right? Like, they were able to choose whether to deposit funds or to route the funds they deposited with us through Euler. They didn't have to do that, and most chose not to, right? Only 5% of the deposits were lost there. But that's not going to work. Choice isn't going to work if we're trying to get it's that phrase you hear so often in crypto, the next billion users. You can't just tell a billion people to do their own research. That's just not how the world works. They just want whatever financial service they choose to work, and they don't want to have to audit the code themselves. And in fact, and this is almost a direct quote, but if a company as good as Euler can't secure itself, if even they, with their 6 audits and all the money they spent on those audits, presumably hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, if they can't secure themselves, I mean, how are you supposed to get the average person to just do their own research and find the safe place to put their money? On the flip side, spoke to one of the co-founders of Angle Labs, and as far as impacted protocols, I mean, they had it as bad as anybody else, right? Like half of the TVL is potentially lost due to this hack. The stablecoin, the issue is effectively unbacked, and minting and burning of the stablecoin has been paused pending the investigation. And he was like, look, this is just extra incentive to make this industry more secure. It's as simple as that. We need composability. If we're not pursuing that, what's the point of all this? Then we can just use traditional finance. This is just a reminder that we have to really double down and focus on finding ways to make sure this doesn't happen again, and whether that's even possible. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many hacks it takes, how many audits it takes, how much security research it takes to figure out a way to prevent these kind of hacks, which seem to happen every other week. But his faith in that notion was unshaken. So,
such an interesting debate on, the core of it is the future of DeFi. Like, will DeFi be safe enough for the next billion users? What will it take to do that? What are the trade-offs? Like, composability is such a core part of the benefits of what decentralized finance brings and does better than traditional finance. Just this idea of money Legos, being able to build in the open, and build more quickly because the code is open source, and you can just plug into things that others have already built instead of starting from scratch. But then the flip side is, you're also carrying that risk. You're carrying the risk of all of the other Legos that you're using to build, this tower. So I don't know. I agree that you cannot expect just everyday people, non-technical people, to be auditing every single financial service that they use. You expect your bank to work, but I mean, we saw that in TradFi that doesn't happen either. At least in DeFi, you're able to verify yourself, or have people who are technical be able to verify, and maybe there's some mix of like credit score, like some sort of standardization of risk that non-technical people can rely on, that we're missing. Something like credit ratings in TradFi. Maybe we need a Moody's for DeFi to give like stamps of approval for these protocols. We need better insurance systems as well. We do have some kind of decentralized insurance, but it hasn't worked so well yet. So we need better systems. But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to give up hope that this can be a safer, more transparent, and better financial system. But I mean, hacks like Euler's definitely prove that we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, roughly 200 million was lost in this hack, and Euler actually had insurance through Sherlock, the company that I believe was the last pair of eyes on the particular piece of code that was exploited. And the payout was, I mean, it was less than $5 million. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it's like, yeah, DeFi insurance programs are far from where they would need to be for me as a user to feel like, okay, I'm good. I can trust this. Like if something bad happens, I mean, most of them, I mean, most of them are trustworthy. I don't think that any blue chip protocol like Euler is a scam at all. But trusting just that there isn't some little thing in the code that somebody could find, like, yeah, insurance would go a long way to helping that. But I don't know of any crypto insurance business that that's ready to make people whole when you have these 7-8 figure hacks.
I mean,
To
you
me,
have
it's amazing
protocols.
that. Oh, go ahead, Mauricio.
Sorry. I mean, you have protocols like Nexus Mutual and stuff where you can get insurance, but of course they can't run. They're not able to operate at scale. So it's not like making 200 million whole. It would be, as an individual user, if you wanted insurance, you could have maybe bought some. I'm not sure if Euler was covered or they had a policy for that. But generally, the issue is scale, right? So most of the coverage is already all taken up. It's very hard to buy coverage at size. And there have been a lot of, if not scams, then like disappointments in the insurance space as well. So we had Cover Protocol that very famously, imploded after the dev team walked away, and a couple of others as what was the other one that was? I think it was called out as a scam or something happened. Was it Armor maybe or something like that? So yeah, like you said, the industry definitely has to mature. And I mean, it's great to be able to use these different money Legos to structure a transaction or do what you want to do. But yeah, safety, with each additional smart contract comes that additional risk that there might just be a loophole in that particular one that an auditor missed, the team missed, everyone missed, and then that allows a malicious attacker to sneak his way in and then drain the whole protocol. So yeah, the risk is definitely still outsized. I mean, I'm the biggest proponent of DeFi to everyone, but I still wouldn't tell my dad, put your savings account money into Aave or something, even though it's proven to be it has, touchwood, hasn't been exploited. But you never know, right? It's all code at the end of the day. And if, as someone who doesn't understand the code myself, it's very hard for me to take a call and say, oh, you know what, this code looks safe to me. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say before that it's pretty amazing to me that it's still the OG DeFi protocols, Aave, Compound, Uniswap, the ones that are like still unscathed and standing and haven't been hacked. Well, kind
That
of
is amazing.
yeah, like the new iterations are, I don't know if it's because they're adding more complexity, taking on more risk, but the OGs, the first one to try, or at least the first one to like succeed in DeFi, remain there, like are still kind of the safest.
let's not jinx it. I have a lot of money on Uniswap.
Knocking on wood right now. Okay, so we're running out of time, but let's wrap up with the last big story of the week, the Ethereum Chapella upgrade. Alex, you wanna walk us through this?
Sure, and just to, I guess, be quick about it, and also, like, I'm not a technical guy, so I can't really explain what exactly happened. But basically, they've been building this very very important upgrade for Ethereum, right? So just a little bit of context: Ethereum, everybody listening to this probably knows, switched from proof of work to proof of stake last year, changing the way that it orders and confirms transactions so that it would slash its energy use by 99%. Proof of stake requires that users deposit 32 ETH in order to become one of the validators that contributes to the ordering and confirming of transactions. And there are a lot of proof of stake blockchains out of there right now. Solana is one of them. And in just about all of them, when you put money in to become a validator, well, you can also take it out if you so choose, right? You're not locking your ETH up for all time. Right now with Ethereum, you actually can't withdraw your stake. The proof of stake engine that's running within Ethereum went live back in December 2020 and has been was running in parallel with the actual Ethereum proof of work blockchain since then. So there are people who staked as far back as 2020 whose ETH has been locked in there. They can't withdraw it. They can't cash out. They can't use it in other DeFi protocols. Obviously, it's a really big deal to to enable withdrawals. So the next big Ethereum upgrade, the last one was the merge when it switched to proof of stake. The next big one is called Shanghai. That was always planned to drop sometime in the spring of 2023. Ethereum's distributed group of developers has been working on this technology. They've been, testing it, bulletproofing it. And some of those final steps happened earlier this week. And in fact, the development team has finally set a specific day, and it's not guaranteed that it's going to happen then, but they've settled on April 12th as the day that the Shanghai upgrade will go live. So for anybody out there who's staked their Ether, that's pretty exciting news. Of course, if you want to withdraw, just a reminder that there's a big exit queue, right? So everybody who staked, who wants to withdraw, won't be able to do so simultaneously all at once and then dump their Ether. They're going to have to kind of get in line, and it's going to take if every single person who staked were to try and withdraw, it would take a very, very, very long time to cycle through that entire list. I think the better part of a year, if not more. So that's kind of the quick and dirty.
Awesome. And then to just finish with the headlines of other major tech news, Uniswap V3 launched on BNB chain after months of infighting. Apparently, A16Z wanted another to use their own protocol, their bridge that they had invested in, but it didn't get their way. The WorldCoin's digital identity protocol went live this week. Owen, our staff reporter, actually tested and this kind of famous orb and had his retina scan. So hopefully, he's safe out there. No, I'm kidding. And then Filecoin launched Ethereum compatible smart contracts. And Meta abandoned NFTs after less than a year. That includes Instagram NFTs. Pretty crazy how quickly that failed. And I think those were the other major news that we were missing, but we ran out of time. There was a lot happening this week. Main things were the fallout from the almost banking crisis in the US, stablecoins, depegging, then repegging, the Ethereum steps towards removing staking, the Euler 200 million hack, and then the Arbitrum Airdrop were the main highlights of this week. So thank you all for joining us and covering all these topics, and come back next week on Friday. Like every Friday, we're here doing our weekly recap. Thanks again, everyone, for joining.